The paradox of choice, understanding how we make decisions. Welcome, language learners. This is Billy, and today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating yet complex aspects of human experience, decision-making. Imagine a moment that might feel familiar to many of you. A crisp autumn morning in Boston. Sarah, a 32-year-old software engineer, stands completely frozen in front of a wall of coffee options. 37 different blends stare back at her. Ethiopian, Colombian, dark roast, light roast, organic, fair trade. Her hand hovers uncertainly over the display, then retreats. Minutes tick by. The line behind her grows longer. Her anxiety begins to rise with each passing second. But this isn't just a simple moment of indecision. This is a window into the profound and complex world of human choice, a journey we're about to explore together. We're about to unpack this fascinating topic. To unpack something means we'll examine it carefully and understand its deeper implications. Let's take a step back in time. For centuries, philosophers and theologians viewed human decisions as purely rational or moral choices. But in the mid-20th century, everything changed dramatically. The scientific understanding of decision-making began to transform. In 1947, two brilliant minds, mathematician John von Neumann and economist Oscar Morgenstern, published a groundbreaking work called Theory of Games and Economic Behavior. They proposed a revolutionary idea. Humans make choices based on expected utility, a rational calculation of potential outcomes and consequences. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. Subsequent research would completely challenge this notion of pure rationality. Our decisions, we would learn, are far more complex and emotional than anyone previously imagined. Let me share a landmark study that perfectly illustrates this complexity. In the year 2000, psychologists Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper conducted an experiment that would reshape our entire understanding of choice. At a high-end gourmet food store, they set up two different jam sampling stations. The first station offered an impressive 24 varieties of jam. The second station featured just 6 varieties. Now, you might think more choices would be better. More options mean more chances to find your perfect jam, right? Wrong. The results were actually totally surprising and not what I expected. At the 24 variety station, only 3% of customers purchased a jar of jam. At the 6 variety station, 30% of customers made a purchase. This wasn't just a small difference, this was a 10-fold increase in conversion. The implications were profound. Too many choices can actually paralyze us, making decision-making more difficult, not easier. Our brains have limited cognitive resources. Every single decision requires mental energy. Psychologists have a term for this: cognitive load, the total mental effort being used in our working memory. Think of your brain like a smartphone battery. Each decision you make drains a little bit of energy. Make too many decisions, and you experience what researchers call decision fatigue, a state where the quality of your choices progressively deteriorates. Here's something that might surprise you. Contrary to classical economic theories, neuroscientists have discovered that emotions are absolutely crucial to decision-making. The famous neurologist Antonio Damasio studied patients with damage to the emotional centers of their brains. These individuals could logically analyze situations perfectly, but they struggled immensely to make even the simplest decisions. But why? Because emotions provide crucial contextual information that pure logic cannot capture. They are not a weakness in our decision-making process. They are an essential strength. Now, let's explore how different cultures approach decision-making. The differences are interesting. Western cultures, particularly in the United States, emphasize individual choice and personal autonomy. A typical American corporate meeting might focus on individual presentations and quick, decisive choices. In contrast, Eastern cultures like Japan prioritize collective consensus and group harmony. A Japanese business meeting might involve extensive discussion to reach a collective decision, valuing the group's perspective over individual rapid choices. Now let's move on to learn about cognitive biases. A cognitive bias is a systematic error in thinking that affects how we process and interpret information. It is a mental shortcut our brain uses to simplify complex information quickly, which can lead to irrational or distorted judgments. Psychologists have identified many fascinating ones that impact our decisions. Here are just 3 of them. 1. Confirmation bias means we naturally look for and read information that confirms our existing beliefs, and we deliberately ignore contradictory evidence when we find it because it doesn't match what we already believe. This is actually a big problem with social media that uses algorithms that often only show us content that matches our current interests and beliefs, reinforcing our existing views and creating echo chambers. 2. The anchoring bias means that the first piece of information we receive about something becomes our fundamental reference point for all future decisions about that thing. The first information you get matters the most. So, imagine you see a jacket at a store that costs $1,200. This price serves as an anchor. Later, you see another jacket for $100, and you immediately think it's so cheap because of the initial high price of the anchor you saw before. Without seeing the first jacket, you might not have considered that the $100 jacket was so cheap. 3. The availability bias means we judge the likelihood of a new event based on how easily we can recall similar events that already happened. Imagine you are considering whether to go swimming at the beach. Recently, you've seen several news reports about shark attacks in another country, but because these reports are fresh in your mind, you might overestimate the likelihood of encountering a shark today, even though, statistically, shark attacks are very rare. The vividness and recency of these reports make them more available in your memory, influencing your perception of risk. Cognitive biases are very fascinating, and if you are interested in learning more about them, I suggest you search on Google for a full list. You know, our brains are complex and difficult to understand. Modern brain imaging techniques like fMRI, functional MRI, have revealed extraordinary insights into how we make choices. Different brain regions activate during various types of decisions. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in our brain's reward system and motivation. The prefrontal cortex is an area of our brain that manages our most complex decision-making processes. So, With all these complexities, how can we make the best decisions? Let me share a practical strategy for making more thoughtful decisions. It's called the 10-10-10 rule, developed by author Susie Welch. Here's how it works. For any significant decision, ask yourself 3 powerful questions. How will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes? How will I feel about this decision in 10 months? How will I feel about this decision in 10 years? And finally, sometimes you just have to trust your gut, which means to rely on your intuitive feelings when making a decision. Okay, now, so for the next week, I challenge you to become a decision-making scientist in your own life. I want you to try these things. 1. Track your daily decisions in a journal. 2. Carefully notice your emotional and rational processes. 3. Experiment with different decision-making strategies. 4. Reflect on your choices without harsh self-judgment. Ask yourself these reflective questions. What typically triggers my indecision? When do I make my absolute best decisions? How do my emotions genuinely influence my choices? This intricate dance of choice is fundamentally what makes us human. Each decision is a story, a moment of potential, a bridge between who we are and who we might become. Here is a final idiom to remember: to sleep on it. Sometimes, when you're struggling with a big decision, it's best to sleep on it, which means to wait and think carefully before making a final choice. This is Billy, signing off from English with Billy. Keep choosing, keep learning, keep growing.